Hello, and welcome to the Handplane Challenge. I'm Mark, your host, and I'm the guy who likes to figure out what makes vintage handplanes tick, exposing their many idiosyncrasies, with a little bit of history thrown in for good measure. Today's video is about the Standard Rule Company smoothing plane. Now, normally, here on the Handplane Challenge, we like to compare one plane against another. Because, as I've said many times before, it's hard to say whether a plane is good or bad in isolation, but it's a lot easier to do so when you're just comparing it relative to another plane. However, on a few occasions, a plane is either very, very good or the opposite. For example, if I had a Conrad Sauer plane, it would be silly to try to compare it against something. It's the epitome of. So today we're just going to look at the Standard Rule Company plane. You're asking yourself right now, well, Mark, does that mean it's good or bad? You're just going to have to watch the rest of the video to find out. Okay, so a little bit of history. Andrew Upson founds the Upson Nut Company in 1872. The Upson Nut Company manufactures nuts and bolts. Simultaneously, apparently, also in 1872, the same Andrew Upson founds the Standard Rule Company. The Standard Rule Company manufactures rules, levers, levels, and similar products until 1883. In 1883, inventors Solon Rust and Arthur Rust received a patent for a new handplane design, and the Standard Rule Company began manufacturing these planes at that time. The Standard Rule Company and Upson Nut Company, under both companies run by the same president, Andrew Upson, merged in 1888. The Standard Rule name disappears at that time. So already you're asking yourself, well, that was only 5 years. That can't be very good. So that does tell us, it's only a 5-year run, and that certainly means that this plane must have been manufactured somewhere in that 5-year interval. I'm certain, reasonably certain, there are no type studies out there to nail it down further than that. Okay, the tool division of Upson Nut, which would include the planes, was sold to Stanley Rule and Level in 1893. So only 5 years again after the Standard Rule Company and Upson Nut Company merged. I've seen no indication that Stanley continued selling this product after that date. Which of course they did with some other companies that they purchased. So there's the background, and now let's try to figure out what makes this plane tick. Okay, let's take a tour of the Standard Rule Company smoothing plane. The plane is 9 inches long, making it about a Stanley No. 4 size plane. There's no markings indicating Standard Rule Company anywhere in the plane. Let's take it apart. The cutter has Standard Rule Company, patent date, Unionville, Connecticut. So that is definitely the right cutter for the plane. We're going to comment more on that in a minute. And then this is the rest of it. So the frog, as you can see, this is basically a fixed frog plane. In other words, there's no way to open or close the mouth. What you get when you insert the plane iron is what you're going to get. So, however, when I use the term fixed frog loosely, because as you can see, the thing rotates on a shaft here. So it turns out that it's magnificently easy to take apart. You just back out the depth adjuster and eventually that thing will come out. So here it is. There's the other side. And that's about all there is to it. Now, a couple of features I want to point out. One interesting feature is that the lower machined surface down here is not flat. It has a angle up. I don't even know how to angle up, angle, whatever. It goes. It angles down and then has a less steep angle out to the front of the mouth. Apparently, kind of a nice feature, it apparently is intended to mate with the cutter, the bevel of the cutter. So I've never seen that before. Another feature is, just while we're speaking of the cutter, very thick cutter. This is like what you would typically find in a wooden plane or a infill plane. I mean, just as thick as you would find in one of those. And then another thing that I want to point out, I have seen a few of these at vintage tool shows, such as the Midwest Tool Collectors and the like, and you have to always watch this. The top of this, this is the hole where one shaft of this thing fits in here and the other end fits down here. But you always want to check. I've seen many of these where this top bracket is broken right here. So apparently that was a substantially weak point of the design. I should just say a little bit more about the depth adjustment mechanism. Basically, you can see there's a threaded rod here. The knob does not turn on the threaded rod. The whole knob and threaded rod assembly turns as a unit. So when you need to increase the depth of the cutter, you rotate the whole assembly, threads in that way and pushes against this tab, making the whole frog assembly carriage go down. But then when you need to retract, and the reason for this rather odd tab back here, of course, then if you need to retract, it does no good, to have this tab here. You need another tab on this side so that when you retract, it presses against this tab. So going down, presses against that tab, going up, presses against that tab. So I puzzled over some of the features of this plane quite a bit, and in fact I had to go back and read the 1883 patent to try to get a better understanding of what these things are, why they designed the plane in this manner. And so first I'm going to sort of divide this section into two parts. In part one, it's pretty clear from the patent that the patent only shows a single iron, not a double iron configuration such as this. And if you had a single iron in here, basically they said they said two things. One was the rocking motion of the carriage enables one to adjust the back of the plane iron to a perfect bearing on the cutting bed, and at the same time support it and hold it against longitudinal motion. So that part I just can't figure out. You know, once you put it in here, there's no way you're going to rock the thing back and forth. So this whole swiveling frog arrangement, I just don't understand it. I think that may have been good for getting a patent, but as far as I can tell, it does zippo for making the plane function. And secondly, bearing in mind that we've still got a single iron in here, even though I've got this double iron there. But basically, the second thing was that you were supposed to be able to use the lever cap as a integrated chip breaker, like we've seen on some of the other planes. The idea for having this sliding arrangement here is you could put the lever cap down close to the end of the cutter for a smoothing action, and then back it up to make it more of a single iron plane. In essence, and in fact, to quote the patent, in changing the character of the plane from a single to a double iron, as hereinafter more particularly described. So that's sort of what I think they meant, what they were after with the original patent and design. Now we go to part two. This plane, as well as many of the pictures in patented transitional and metallic planes, the fine reference book put out by Roger Smith, you know, the pictures on the standard rule section show many planes with a double iron exactly like this one. So I am quite confident that this is original equipment. However, something is still screwy, because when you can see that in this frog arrangement, this cavity here is very small. That's the cavity where the nut fits, is in this cavity, and so it has a very small range of motion. So let's just try it with holding it in there. If we back up like this, we're going to run into one side of the stuff. See, now we are now hitting that front of that cavity. And if we go the other way, we hit the sort of shaft arrangement in there. Now, see, there we've stopped. And all of that means that, then furthermore, you can see that basically that means that the cap iron, the chip breaker, this distance sets it, you know, where the end of the chip breaker is, and it's very fixed because of this necessity to fit the bolt into this cavity. And what I found is that means you can't actually set the cutter with the cap iron, with a chip breaker close to the end of the cutter as shown here. In fact, that's where I have it now. I could maybe get it a little closer, but there's no way I can get it out to the sort of the 32nd or 64th inch distance like I would normally be accustomed to. So that's it seems like they started out with a single iron arrangement, and that, I guess, didn't work. I've not found any references about this, but it must not have worked because they went to this double iron arrangement, shoehorned into the single iron design, and it just, I hate to say it, it just doesn't work, you know. So indeed, that's a problem. So I guess that's about all I can say about this particular, about the Standard Rule Company plane. If anyone has any better information about why this design is the way it is, I would certainly appreciate hearing it. So, even though we're not comparing the Standard Rule plane to another plane, we still want to see if it takes a shaving. Now, just as a reminder, the cap iron is not very close to the edge of the cutter. In fact, I would say, probably we wouldn't be able to see it on camera, but it's a solid 1/8 of an inch back from the edge. You know, maybe teetering on 3/16. Certainly way more than I would ever set way farther back than I would ever set the cap iron. At any rate, here we go. Can we take a shaving? Let's get the camera aimed in the right place. And here we go. Doing fairly nicely. Nice thin shavings. Now, you know, I certainly have the cutter immaculately sharp. So there we've got it. Thin shavings, fairly wide. Doing pretty good. So it's set up with it's obviously in a double plane iron arrangement right now. However, with the cap iron that far back, it's really operating more like a single plane iron. Chip breaker is not doing very much for us. As long as you have an immaculately sharp blade, as I do, you're going to get a shaving. My prediction would be that it would be difficult to use with any kind of difficult grain that you might encounter. But nonetheless, at least takes a shaving, so it's not all bad. So let's wrap it up. Okay, what have we learned about this plane? This plane has two major flaws. One, as I've said before, I've seen a lot of planes where this casting was broken. So there's an obvious design weakness. Second, I am unable to make the cap iron get, set close to the end of the cutter. Now, I am fairly certain that I've got original equipment here, so either one of two things is true. One is it's possible that somebody over the 100 years, more than 100 years since this plane has been in existence, somebody may have shortened the cap iron. Possible. Maybe they thought they were improving it somehow. So I don't know. I haven't seen a good example. I don't have anything to compare it to. So that could be a possibility. Or the alternative is, if this is in fact the way the cap iron was originally, and like I say, I've seen pictures where this plane looks just like the other pictures in P-Tampia. If that's the case, they just plain screwed up the design, in my opinion. I am not able with this cap iron to set the chip breaker close to the end of the cutter. So I'm giving it a fail. I'm scared to use the plane because I might break that casting, and I can't set the chip breaker close like I like it. So it's just not a good plane in my opinion. There you have it. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe if you like the video, or leave comments, or hit the like button. And so without further ado, we'll see you next time on the Handplane Challenge.